Assalamu alaikum. My name is Kaiser Aslam. I work as the Muslim chaplain at Rutgers University through the Center for Islamic Life. And today on Muslim, I'm going to be talking about Islamic phrases that Muslims use in their day-to-day lives. We have the phrase Wallah or Wallahi. If you've been around a Muslim for long enough and they've gotten passionate about a topic, sometimes Wallah will come up, or I swear by God, or Wallahi if you come from the South Asian continent. They have different ways of saying it, but it's all generally the same of I swear by God. Wallah or Wallahi is swearing by God. It's the most serious form of communication that you and I can make because you bring up the most serious topic in any of our lexicons, which is talking about God. So when you say by God, it's by the most important thing for me. That's what Wallahi or Wallah really means. You'll hear people use this for their biggest needs and their smallest needs. And there's something beautiful about that. Muslim culture online sometimes call like the Wallah bros or the Wallah sisters. And it's this idea of like people who continuously just say Wallahi, Wallahi, Wallahi over everything. But you'll see it online, on Twitter quite often, where someone will just have Wallah and then insert this. And it's typically after a food item. Wallah, this is the best meal I've ever had. They could be being sincere. It's not for us to judge that they're not calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appropriately. So we leave it as they really are passionate people. But the one thing that needs to be understood when Wallahi is said or Wallah is said, it needs to be a truthful statement because you cannot attribute a lie to God. And that's a really scary point of what should really dictate the uses, whether it was truthful or not. Because you're really bringing up the one who truth manifests in, and that is God. Something that Muslims will often tell another Muslim is like, say Wallah, that something occurred. And in that point, they're asking for the actual truth. They're asking for your most sincere expression of truth in that moment. And in that moment, we start getting into a list of priorities. Because of course, you're supposed to speak the truth. But what if it's one of those that like it's a truth that really is not going to be that consequential? So if someone asks, do I look fat in this? Say Wallah. First, they probably shouldn't say that because it might not empower them as much as they think it will. And on the other time, it might be best to maybe not say Wallah in that moment and go by their own trust and be like, no, trust me, you look amazing. That's probably a better way of handling that than swearing by God in that moment. The next phrase we have is Mashallah. Mashallah translates to what God has willed or God has willed it. It's typically found in the past tense, and it's typically found when you're amazed by something. So you bring God right back into it, saying, God willed this to happen. Mashallah is used when you see something amazing, and Mashallah is used actually for two purposes. The one is to protect yourself from greed, because when you see that God has blessed someone with something, you want to attribute that to God, not your own insecurity or not the other person's maybe accomplishments that you want. So you actually protect them from your own greed by saying Mashallah, and you also then protect them from the outside, and that is that you keep yourself from thinking that actually it's them who did something. You say God has favored them, and that's the best thing you could say about them in that moment. Mashallah will be used on many social media sites as soon as someone puts an awesome picture up or they found themselves getting a job or having a baby. Immediately the response will be Mashallah. Sometimes they add to that the Barakallah, may God increase you or may God put blessings in it for you. And these are supposed to be expressions of just happiness. And that's what we should be seeing them as. But sometimes we get the other side, which is people will post something and then command everyone to say Mashallah, because they're afraid of what many Muslims understand to be nadhar or ayn, which is the evil eye, this idea that someone can look at you with greed, someone can look at you with distaste, and that causes some of your blessings to be removed. A balanced approach to the evil eye is those that really believe that someone's glance or someone not saying Mashallah can do them harm. They should also then appreciate that someone's heartfelt dua can do them so much good. Say Mashallah often, and yes, you can say Mashallah to yourself. That's something people get very weird about. They're like, am I showing off when I say Mashallah? No, if you look in the mirror and you look good, say Mashallah. It's okay. The next phrase that we'll be going over is the phrase of Inshaallah, if God wills. You've probably heard it when you were making plans with someone. Maybe you were planning on doing something tomorrow, and the other person didn't fully want to commit, so they say Inshaallah. Inshallah does not mean maybe, even though unfortunately that's how many Muslims use it. So Inshallah is a term you're supposed to use when we're planning about the future, and it's supposed to be this phrase that perfectly captures the balance between free will and predestination. Huge theological conversations, but it's basically the idea that I make a plan and I intend to fulfill a plan, but I know that God's plan supersedes my plan. So what do I say? I say Inshallah, because I am fully committed to do something, but there could be an act of God that forbids me from doing it. So that's why we use the term Inshallah almost as an insurance policy, but it does not mean a way of making a flimsy commitment. It actually is, you're making the strongest commitment possible. When God uses the idea of Inshaallah in the Quran, it's found twice in the 18th chapter of the Quran, in which God says, لا تقولون إني فاعل ذلك غدا. Don't ever say about a thing that I will definitely do it, إلا أن يشاء الله, except that you say Inshaallah. And that's the idea of you're supposed to make really strong commitments and then add to it Inshaallah. And the other idea of Inshallah is God continues the conversation that in case you forgot to mention God, you're supposed to, in that moment, say Inshallah. And the way this looks like in practical life, it's not, I'm calling someone, I'll see you tomorrow, click. And then you don't think, I forgot to say Inshallah, let me call them back, I'll see you tomorrow, Inshallah. No, it's more for you. You need to remember God in your plans. And that really is the essence of Inshallah, that when I make a plan, I actually have God incorporated within my plan so that I'm always remembering God. This phrase is actually a way of constantly remembering God. And that phrase and how it's used in the Quran actually ends by saying that what really comes from Inshallah is that maybe asa an yahdiyani rabbi لِأَقْرَبَ مِنْ هَذَا رَشَدًا, that maybe God will get me closer to guidance as a result of the plan that I just made. And that's always the hope behind Inshallah, that when I do something, it's going to get me to my ultimate destination, which is what? Closeness to God. If you want more in-depth content on any of the things that we talked about today, any of these phrases, there's actually a series of this that I have put up on the Center for Islamic Life at Rutgers University on our YouTube page. You can find us at youtube.com/silru or on Facebook at facebook.com/silru. Feel free to follow us there, and if we can ever be of service to you, don't hesitate to reach out.